All right, folks. So it's 12, and I want to respect your time, so we'll get started. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Beyond Concrete, the client experience. My name is Pete Sharon, and I'm the president of the IWAD Group. And I want to start by thanking our panelists, and I would like our panelists just real quickly just to introduce yourselves, and then we can move on to other things. So let's start with John.
Well, good morning for me, everybody. I'm out here on the West Coast, so good morning. My name is John Bolton. I am Vice President of Operations for Development for Park Lawn Corporation. I've been doing this kind of gig for 37 years now.
And Kelly.
Thanks, John.
Kelly and your team.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Kelly Vella. I'm the president of the Kentucky Cemetery Association, along with general manager for Archel Hetty at Rest Haven, which is part of SCI/Dignity. And I've been in the industry going on 29 years in August.
My name is Phil Woodland, former GM of a cemetery, currently location manager of the funeral home, but I was the one who kind of brought MonuGrid into our market a few years back.
Thank you for that. I'm the superintendent at Rest Haven Cemetery. I have been doing it now for about 5 years.
Thank you, Todd. And Keenan, last but not least.
Last but not least, I'm Keenan Nopke. I've been in this industry since 1956 when I started working for my dad at 6 years old.
Wow.
And, so I won't tell you how old I am, but anyhow, you can maybe figure that out. I'm president of a small cemetery, family-owned cemetery, funeral home, crematory, and pet cemetery in Palm Harbor, Florida, where it's about 85 degrees today for those that didn't hear the conversation earlier. And I'm excited to be here with y'all today.
Well, thank you very much. And again, I really thank you guys for coming on. It's very much appreciated. And I also would like to thank, the rest of the people who have registered and have joined us today. This webinar isn't just about introducing a new solution. It's about hearing directly from the people who have experienced the transition firsthand. For years, concrete has been the default for monument foundations, and MonuGrid is changing all that and creating a paradigm shift. Today, you'll hear from cemetery professionals who have put it to the test, sharing their real-world experiences, challenges, and results. What makes this discussion unique is that it's not about what we say, it's about what our clients have lived. You will hear about what convinced them to try MonuGrid, how it compares to traditional methods, and the impact it's had on their operations and maintenance. So just a quick housekeeping. If you have any questions, please use the chat. We have people that you don't see that will actually monitor the questions, and we will do our best to answer the questions to you. And if we need to take it away and communicate with you at a later time, we certainly will do that. But we'll try and answer all of the questions for you on this call. So we encourage you to ask questions and listen with curiosity, ask questions, and think about how these experiences may apply to your own cemetery or organization. With that, I'll hand things over to our moderator, which is Jonathan. So Jonathan, take it over.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'd like to thank everyone again who's on the panel and everyone who's attending. So for those who know me, my name is Jonathan. For those who don't, my name is still Jonathan. And I am the installation and technical specialist here at MonuGrid. So if you've ever done some training on MonuGrid or information sessions, you've probably heard of me or seen me on a call. So that's what I do here at MonuGrid. Love doing it. It's a passion of mine. So anytime that you have a question, again, like Pete said, please put it in the chat. So how this is going to go, basically, this is what we wanted to do, is just a roundtable discussion with our guests, people that have been using MonuGrid for a long time and have experienced great things with it. So it's not a Q&A, it's really a roundtable discussion. So we invite you, if you do have questions that you want to ask our panelists, please write them in the chat and we'll make sure that they get answered. So I want to start from the beginning. So, Keenan, this is going to be a question for you. Oh, yes. Also, I'd like to mention that we do have one of our special guests here on the call. We do have Phil Persia on the call. He's one of the partners here at MonuGrid, and he's also the one who brings validation to our solutions. He is one of the leading geotechnical engineers in the country. So I really want to thank Phil for being here today. So all of your technical questions will actually be filtered through our soil engineer. So you know, you can ask him as many questions as you want in terms of technical stuff. So thanks a lot, Phil, for being here.
My pleasure, Jonathan. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, so like I was saying, I want to start from the beginning, and from the beginning, I want to start out with asking Keenan a question to get this going. Since you've been using this the longest on the panel, you've been using this since 2019. So I just want to ask you, so what challenges were you facing with your monuments foundations before you started MonuGrid, and what stood out about MonuGrid when you first heard about it that, you know, enticed you to try it out?
What we were doing is like everybody, we were using concrete, buying it in 50-pound bags, listening to guys complain about their backs, and they're worried about getting old and having back issues. And being a funeral director myself, I know those same kind of issues are with funeral directors because they use their backs in the wrong way. And I saw an ad in the magazine. I saw this green grid and thought, that looks like strange stuff, and started doing a little bit of research with it and talked to Pete, I believe,
Yes.
and convinced him to send me some to play with. And I literally, we played with it. We tried to destroy it. We tried to bend it. We tried to do everything we could to harm it, and we really couldn't do that. It wouldn't harm. Then we put a product on it. We put either an upright monument or a columbarium on it, and set it in some nice Florida sand, which moves all over if you walk by it. And what we found was the product didn't move. No matter what we tried to do with running a backhoe by it or whatever, it held up, it did what it was supposed to. And that's what really made the deal for us. And we still do it today. We put monuments on it. We put flat markers on it. We can't make it move. And that's, to me, one of the biggest problems cemeteries got is running equipment either over or around them, around monuments, memorials, and they move or tip.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Great testimonial. Thank you.
That's great to hear that. And you know, the other thing that I caught when you were talking about it is actually the guys who are on the ground, the people who are on the ground. You know, it can be back-breaking work to haul concrete and stuff like that. So for the guys who are working on the ground there over at Rest Haven, is what Keenan said pretty much what you've experienced? You know, a diminishment in physical labor and stuff like that, and you can also get it done quicker, I imagine, too.
Yes, it's a lot quicker. It takes us about an average, if we have everything there with us on the site, takes us about an hour to hour and a half to get a full-size monument installed.
Nice.
So
nice. And before that, I guess you had to wait for curing times and stuff like that. So there's no going back. You can get it done within the hour and then move on to something else, correct?
Yes.
That's awesome. That's great. That's great. And now, if I can get the same opinion, but on a different side of the coin. So John Bolton, as we all know, you help run a pretty big company. So in terms of a big company looking at a solution like MonuGrid, like what stood out for you guys? Is it the same, or is it more on so what's Park Lawn looking at this for?
Ours is more on the project side, Jonathan, because, you know, we started, you know, my responsibilities are to build development, right? To add inventory development. And a lot of that involves concrete foundations, concrete sidewalks, everything involving concrete. And when we came out of the pandemic, the price of concrete was astronomical, and it was creating issues with our, you know, returns and our margins because it was so expensive to use. So we reached out to you guys and started working with you. We use MonuGrid primarily now on projects, and are replacing any concrete foundations under, cremation inventory, the 2 and 4 niche personal estate columbariums, benches, pedestals, things like that. That's all we use underneath that product because concrete has become so expensive. It's almost cost prohibitive.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. I mean, I've had some, not just cost prohibitive, but I've had some cemeteries tell me that they have to wait for the concrete truck to come because they don't want to do 1 or 2 monuments at a time. They want to do a bank of 15 or 20 monuments. So like you said, being hindered or being slowed down by the production of concrete or even the availability of concrete, some cemeteries were able to erase a 2 or 3 year backlog from cemeteries that are just sitting there waiting for concrete. They can go out and do it themselves very quickly.
Well,
So Kelly, go ahead, John. Yeah.
If you look at a typical development, I mean, we're putting in, 100 foundations for these products at one time. So to time pouring the concrete, taking the time to pour the concrete, waiting on the, timing the granite to come in to set, we can do it all. I don't want to say in a day, but we can do it very quickly with a group of, with our team members to be more efficient.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, for sure. And just the flexibility, like I had someone in Boston say that, it's really quick to install, but the advantage with this too is we can, we were doing a foundation for our columbarium and all of a sudden we had a service. So we were able to stop the project without effect. You're not waiting on concrete trucks to pour the concrete, you're not rushing anybody. They were able to stop the project, go deal with something, and then come back to it and keep going. So there's no hindrance in the project there. You can either do it quickly or you can take your time with it. So I think that's really great. Thanks for that insight, John. We'll come back to some projects a little bit later, but I'd really like to hear from Kelly as well on this subject. So what stood out for you at the cemetery as a cemetery manager to say, hey guys, we should really explore this and try it out?
Well, for me, it was when I got a call from my peer, Phil Wilburn. He was general manager up in Lexington at Bluegrass, and he was talking about this product. And honestly, when we were talking, I had no clue really. I couldn't even visualize it, but how awesome it was. And it's saving his crew time because he had a smaller crew than the crew I have here at my cemetery. But I was intrigued. So I had sent up one of my guys to go and kind of just shadow to see what this was all about. So he comes back and he's like, Kelly, it's awesome. And I'm like, what's awesome about it? Well, we no longer have to pour. We no longer have to wait 2 to 3, 4 days for it to dry. To me, from a general manager standpoint, you want to talk about cost effective, check. You want to talk about customer satisfaction, check. Things are happening quicker. Our team gets that much more done because, again, we're not pouring. We're not having to go back to the site 2 or 3 days later, hoping it didn't rain or whatever can possibly happen. Also, and then those that have been installed years ago that we have used, the concrete, future MonuGrid, if something does happen, it's going to be that much easier. We don't have to sit there and try to break away at it, re-pour it. It just all around, I highly recommend that product.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I think you bring a good point with the later maintenance, right? So in every situation where you're getting MonuGrid, you're going to get an onboarding training. So you're going to have some time with me. I'm going to show you how to install it, what type of granular to use. And in some situation, the granular inside of the foundation can change depending on what type of soil you're working with in the cemetery. So I think all 3 of you have had some training sessions with MonuGrid or with me. So looking back into MonuGrid, if someone is and I'm going to ask this question for all 3 of you, and we can start with Keenan again. What would you tell someone that's looking into starting to use MonuGrid, but they're not sure about it? What would you tell them to get them to, get over the skepticism and actually go ahead and try it for themselves and take a look? We'll start with Keenan.
I would encourage them to either, if they're nearby, come see me. I want to show them the product, let them handle it, let them bring a couple of their people with them so they can handle it themselves. Because my team, when I got it, they looked at me like I was nuts. You want me to do what with this and eliminate concrete? yeah, it sounds kind of strange, but yeah, that's what we want to do. And to me, it's a touchy-feely thing. We're also entrenched in our industry in what we've always done. This is not what you've always done. This is something totally off the grid, as we all know. And they've got to get their fingers in it and feel it and see how it works. If you can't come see me, I'll send you some. I'll call Pete and really ask Pete to send you some. But,
there you go. I'm ready. I'm ready for your call.
It's really, you can look at the video. You can watch us today talk about it, but get it in your hand. That's what sold me. More than anything else, that's what sold me.
For sure. Thanks, Keenan. Yeah, that's great. I have conversation with people all the time, and that's the thing, right? Like you said, if you're not convinced by the videos or by anything else like that, the best way you can do it is getting some in your hands and trying it for yourself and seeing the results for yourself. So I'm going to jump to John here again. The same question: is there anything different or someone, or you would give them advice or something like that on someone who wants to try it and they're unsure?
Yeah, I would just echo what Keenan said. Look, I think you need to rely on people that have used it and ask for their opinions. None of us are employed by Pete or get any spiffs from Pete or anything. We just use the product, right? And we have proven time after time that it's a good product. I was very skeptical, and Pete can tell you that I was unbelievably
That's
skeptical.
what I was going to say.
And I had some of my contractors that put in some of my gardens, talked me out of it. Oh no, it's not going to last. The freeze line this, and I eventually just, sometimes you just got to try it, and sometimes you just have to put faith in the people that have experience with it. Pete shared with me that Keenan was using it. I've known Keenan for a long time. And it was kind of one of those things. Well, if Keenan's using it in Florida, and I know what the soil's like in Florida, which is 100% sand, just about, I'm gonna give it a shot. And after I gave it a shot, there's no going back with the way we design things now.
That's great. That's great. And Kelly, I'll get the same opinion from you. I know the guys have pretty much summed it up, but if we could get your perspective, and then the guys beside you as well from boots on the ground stand.
3 words: seeing is believing. Again, I've been around going on 29 years, and all I know is concrete. All I know is that's how we've always done it. Never knew there was another way, never knew that there was an easier way, more cost-effective way, a way that would also help our customer service. So again, seeing is believing. Check it out. It's not something that is a novelty in my eyes. We've been now using this product for, I want to say 4 or 5 years. I'm definitely going to start expanding it and using it with my memorials, and made some notes on our pedestals and things like that. But again, it works, and it's not a novelty. I would definitely check it out.
So I came at it from a different avenue. The cemetery I managed had no upright memorials whatsoever. And we added a garden with upright memorials. So no one there had experience doing it any other way. But I talked to a local monument company. They're telling me about foundations, how much they can charge to come out and pour, how long it takes. I got with my maintenance superintendent, and we decided to do it ourselves. And we got some spec monuments in before the garden went in. And, he placed one of those and did it the old fashioned way with concrete, and had the outside monument company help him. But then I don't know how I connected with Peter initially. I don't remember, but I remember the phone conversation, and he's basically like, just try it. Give it a try. So we got some in, and my maintenance superintendent, myself, and another maintenance guy went out, and the 3 of us placed 2 memorials at the same time, one of each method. And regardless of the cost, which I later found out was better, the time and effort, and we just decided the MonuGrid's the way to go. So the entire memorial garden at Bluegrass is all on MonuGrid. We never had any problems, like some others have said. We didn't necessarily try to make it fail, but we definitely gave it the go for it. We put it in and to see what could happen. And then, to be honest, we talked to Jonathan one day, had a class, and found out we were doing everything pretty much right, but he gave us some tweaking points. So that was a good class, valuable for us. And there will be no monument set at that cemetery on concrete. So I definitely highly recommend it.
That's great. That's great.
Alrighty, on me, I would kind of piggyback off of the I would kind of have somebody shadow me a little bit to kind of show them how it all actually works. We can show them the good and the bad. On the bad, showing them how easy it is to get something like that laid when you're out doing a monument. Say that monument's leading, the foundation's busted. Show them how aggravating and how hard it is to get that monument out or get that base out of there and get just a little bit of dirt added back in there, and then start with the MonuGrid to get it leveled back out again, how much easier it is. Another way is, I've seen it before, I've already had to do it, where you got to bust out a foundation from where a family has sold that property, and the new family that's wanting to purchase that property cannot afford a monument. So busting out that foundation versus being able to clean it out makes a big difference too.
Good point.
Wow. Yeah, that's
For sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. We have a lot of maintenance companies who now work with MonuGrid because of exactly what you said, right? They can go in, get it done, no curing time, no coming back, and no crushing of the concrete or anything like that. So I heard you say that you had a class with us. So if you could tell me how does the onboarding process, how did that help you, and how is it valuable to get that time with me, the training session, or even be able to call me at any time and just, ask advice or anything that comes with planning of the installation of the monument, that you can call me at any time and you can ask questions and stuff like that. So how's the support and onboarding from our side of things?
So Jonathan, I'll speak to that. We had that class. It was myself and 3 maintenance workers. All of them were able to ask questions during that class. And of course, you did tell us, hey, you can call me anytime afterwards. And I'm going to say, I think we only called you a couple of times afterwards. And the reason we only called a couple of times is because the class wrapped it all up for us. They had watched the videos, they'd watched the training. We had actually installed a few on our own, but the insight that was given, and I want to say that class wasn't that long, an hour we were together maybe. I may have that time incorrect, but when I left out of there and looked at the maintenance team and said, do you guys understand this? They did. And they rarely had questions after that. Like I said, I think after that, in the coming months, we may have called you once or twice to tweak something. But the class really wrapped it up. But when we did call, the response was quick and put us back on the right track.
Awesome. That's great. And we can jump to John. John, I know I've been working with Kevin Long and Jake Polk and all these guys. Any feedback from them or yourselves on how the interaction with the MonuGrid and the training team is?
Yeah, I know that I am in touch with both of them quite a bit, and the training that there's nothing better than the hands-on training, right? So you getting down there with them and putting a shovel to dirt and showing them exactly what to do, it paid off. And I think what really, Jonathan, I don't want to inflate your ego very much, Jonathan, but my guys specifically say, yeah, thank you.
Please don't.
What you did was also, they were able, then you trained the trainer. You were able to give them enough insights where they could go train multiple locations. Because like Kelly, we've got large markets where, you're training a few people and then they're spreading the news to everybody else. And I know the training was very effective. And then, we've got a learning management system with our company, and you were able to provide some training videos that we were able to put up on our LMS, so which are very effective. So people that are, even remote, if I send a pallet of MonuGrid to St. Louis, they can hop on the video and watch it until you can get out there and do some training.
Perfect. And same question to you, Keenan.
Well, our training was more to ourselves. We were, I think, pretty much an experiment. But since then, as different products change, or we change the use of them, or try to change the use of them, y'all are always there to help us. Tell us if we're getting too close to the edge or not getting too close to the edge yet. And And our little 30-acre cemetery is amazing. All the different strange places we've tried to put stuff and how we're setting them in there. And we would have never thought about doing it if we had to pour concrete in there or carry concrete in there and so forth. And, you know, it allows you to create some beautiful little estates for cremation and so forth in areas you'd never get to with concrete. And
that's awesome.
And we have pictures coming up. We have pictures coming up that that will show that as well. So it's pretty cool.
That brings me actually to my next point that I wanted to talk about. You know, because Keenan, you brought up a great point, and I'll start off with you again, and then I'll go in the opposite order. But you know, you said you could complete something where concrete would be hard to use in that situation. So is there any project or any installation, like how do you go about the way you install monuments now, knowing that you don't have to get in there with a concrete truck or stuff like that? So where do you have a story or maybe an anecdote of when MonuGrid made a real difference in a project where you if it wasn't available, you could not have used concrete?
I've got several. I mean, that we're developing. We've just finished developing and installing 51 or 52 cremation estates behind another cemetery feature along a pond. And if we didn't have the use of MonuGrid, I would have never even thought about the project, simply for the fact I could have never gotten a concrete truck nearby or even with a pumper to pump the concrete in there for it.
Right.
It would have just been grassed area. I couldn't get a monument in there, couldn't get a private family mausoleum. I could have sold the property, but could have never gotten it in unless I had a helicopter. So I mean, it just that's you know, what the product allows us to do is look beyond the edges. You know, look for those special places where when that special family comes along and says, you know, I want this, but I want that, but I don't want it to look like something to everybody else. You've got that area or a couple of those areas in your mind. You say, bingo, and it works into a nice sale, but it also meets the needs of that family that isn't the normal family that walks in your door, maybe. So it allows you to be a little creative, makes it fun.
Great, Keenan, thanks. And Kelly and the guys, same question.
Todd Fiddler answer this question.
Alrighty, so there was an issue going on where we was digging on a grave and we hit bedrock, and we ended up having to get in some special equipment to bust out the bedrock. Well, when we bust out the bedrock on this ground, we had to dig out a big area, pretty much took up the whole lot. So with the ground settling, it takes forever for it to settle. So if we would have still been pouring concrete, it would have took us 3 months for that ground to settle, for all the moisture to get out of that area, in order to be able to lay a foundation in there to get a new monument put on there. So their monument actually came in when we was doing the dig. So that speeded up the process of being able to get that monument set in the ground. It didn't matter if the ground was wet or not. It didn't take a long time for it to cure. So we was able to get it in, get it set, and get that new monument on there that family has been waiting on years for.
That's awesome. That's great. Yeah, and it goes back to what I was saying earlier. We're working closely with cemeteries who have backlogs, right? So I was in New Jersey just a couple of weeks ago, and there was a Chinese community that wanted their monuments put on before Chinese New Year, and they had 75 monuments that had to go in within a week, and the concrete company wasn't coming, and all this the headaches that you can get with organizing concrete trucks. And we sent one of our contractors. So we have contractors that are certified pretty much all over the place. So if ever somebody needs a certified contractor to install their MonuGrid, just let us know and we can send someone over. But we send our contractor in. He started at 8 o'clock on the Friday morning, and by 2 o'clock on Friday afternoon, those 75 monuments were in. Foundations were done and ready to go, and they got all that backlog erased and those monuments set on there before the event. So the client was very, very happy about that. So before I hit the next question, I'm just going to ask you, John, the same question that I was saying before. How has it helped you with your projects? Because I know you do a lot of projects with these, and how has it changed your approach on how you go about installing monuments?
Well, I'll tell you, let me back up just a little bit, Jonathan, with the kind of the how how it saved our butts a little bit. We had a grand opening scheduled on a garden in Houston, and a hurricane decided to take a hard left turn and hit Houston and make the ground so saturated and wet that we couldn't get equipment, concrete trucks and things like that to finish foundations for a grand opening we had where hundreds of people were going to be there. So luckily we had some MonuGrid left over from a previous project at the same cemetery, and we were able to use our own equipment, set the foundations ourselves, set the product ourselves. So we were ready for the grand opening. Without it, we couldn't have done it. We would have had to have no product for the grand opening because the ground was so saturated.
Great. That's great. And that brings me to my other question, and we'll go back to Kelly. So I'll mix up the order again. So, we keep talking about these events and making the clients happy, the end user, if for a lack of a better term. So how has that helped you with the clients that, the families that own the monument, the families that want the monument set? So do you have any stories about how you've helped out the clients and stuff like that? I know we just talked about events and getting ready for them, but any other stories about the end user, the client being happy with their monument being set quicker or anything like that?
Well, sure. I wouldn't say it's a story. It's a fact. Our monuments are being installed that much quicker. And I go back to the day when I first was introduced to this product by Phil. Back in the day, and knock on wood, we were down in maintenance crew. So this product helped us. It helped us be able to stay ahead, stay current with our installs. And so that all around just impacts the customer. Does the customer know I went from concrete to MonuGrid? No. But does the customer know their monument arrived and we're calling them saying, hey, Kelly, just want to let you know your monument's here. It looks great. We're going to go ahead and install it. And it's going to be installed within 3 days, where in the past it could have been 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 weeks, just depending. So now looking at it with this product, yeah, we could be down a guy or two. And again, knock on wood, that doesn't happen. But we can still stay current with our installs. So all around, it's just a win.
Awesome. That's great. And Keenan?
Same thing. For us, it's a simple thing. When we know the monuments are coming, we're out there literally waiting for them to come off the truck. So we're getting them in. We're ready to install them the day they get here. Because one, you got the product, you carry it out, you get the ground ready for it that morning. It comes in that evening, or next day you put it out. It gets us to deliver product quicker. That way we can count it as a sale. It gets the same thing, gets the customer happy because they come out and you've told them it's coming. Doggone, you catch them. They're surprised how quickly you get it in.
Mm-hmm. If I can just make a quick comment, Jonathan came out with a line years ago, and he said to a client, you could have your installer carry a coffee in one hand and carry a foundation underneath the other arm.
How true.
Said, you're right.
I just said that because that's what I do in my my landscaping company on the weekends. I use this product extensively as well and exclusively. So when I talk about this and when I say how great it is, it's because I'm using it as well for hot tubs and stuff like that. So it's absolutely a game changer in that industry as well. So John, I know you've already sort of answered the question, but if you have another quick story about how it's helping out your clients at the end of the day.
To both Kelly and Keenan's point, the proof's in the pudding, right? I mean, our surveys that we send to families, the complaints about my monument's not set, you missed this, you missed that, are reduced and almost negligible. So I mean, it's just increasing your level of customer service.
Awesome. I'm going to go back to Kelly just because I made note of something that you said at the beginning. I didn't want to cover it right away, but you said, in the future, you're seeing this as something that you can expand the cemetery with, do projects, do more with it. So how do you see MonuGrid fitting into your future projects and growth of the cemetery? How do you see that happening?
Well, shame on me. I should have done this probably 2-3 years ago, but I'll admit I wasn't quite ready. I did the monuments first. We need to start doing it with our bronze and our granite memorials, because every year we all know we're heading into spring and Memorial Day, and brings out a lot of families, and with those families come work orders. My marker is sinking. And I know if we do it right from the beginning, I'm sure in time there's always going to be a little sinkage. Let's face it, that's what happens out in the cemetery. But I do believe this will be a problem solver for the future. So with my superintendent sitting right next to me, I just hand wrote him a note. So we got to start that this year. And he's like, he's on board. So, and then of course you mentioned pedestals and columbariums, and we do 2 crypt mausoleums. I guess I never even thought that far out. And so very excited.
Yeah. And that, I mean, just to go off of that, some, there is a misconception about what you can do with these grids and how much weight you can apply to them. And, I'm going to just throw it to Phil here real quick if he wants to answer, but basically this is not a new product. This is something that soil engineers have been working with for 30 years plus. All of our roads, bridge approach slabs, on-ramps, off-ramps, overpasses, they're all made with reinforced soil structures. All we've done is put it in a smaller package so that cemeteries can build these as well. So Phil, if you want to just add to that quickly, you can.
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan. You're stealing a bit of my thunder there. I've been hearing people's stories, and it's fantastic. Love hearing the experience they've been having and the positive feedback. I've been doing this reinforced soil structures since 1991, and it started before me as well. And I work mostly in infrastructure, so highways, transit, railways, ports. I've been designing pavement structures and foundations with reinforced soil, and that's how we came up with the solution. I've taken what we've already has become the standard practice in transportation and infrastructure, and working with Pete and Jonathan, we came up with the idea, hey, I'm doing foundations like this for big structures. Certainly we can do this for monuments. And that's what we started doing it. So this is standard practice. It's just new in the cemetery industry, but in construction, it's decades old. And like, to give examples, I did a foundation for a 6-meter high concrete retaining wall, big gravity blocks on pretty soft soil, and it's holding up a transit line, and it's on a weak fill. So we did a MonuGrid base underneath it, just one layer and a foot of granular to help spread the load, and it's been monitored by surveying for 3 years, and it had to have less than 10 millimeters, or what is that, about 3/8 of an inch movement. And within 3 years, that's what we've met on this weak soil, because we've got that foundation base under there with the MonuGrid. So it's a no-brainer for cemeteries. The loads are so much smaller. And
they're static, right, Phil?
Yeah.
Like a highway is dynamic loading. There's things shaking around.
Except for
as
Keenan said, there is equipment and stuff that drives by, and even flat markers. They get driven on. I've seen maintenance equipment drive right across the flat markers. So yeah, having the grid under there. And when you mentioned about skepticism, something that helps me understand it. When people put a monument on concrete, they think, okay, it's on concrete. It's not on, that reinforced soil. And it's like, okay, but what's the concrete sitting on? The concrete's sitting on soil at some point.
Yep.
So with concrete, you're adding weight to the system, because you've got a heavy, especially in upright, you got a heavy piece of stone. Then you're adding a really heavy concrete base, and it's only going to put more pressure on the soil. So instead of taking the monument down with concrete, basically you're making a very deep monument to competent soil. Let's bring that competent soil up to the underside of the monument. Right, so that's what we do with the MonuGrid. We're digging a hole and putting soil back in. So we're not increasing the weight. We're actually reducing by eliminating the concrete. So there's even less potential for settlement. So that's a very simple way of looking at it, I think.
And I think when people look at our systems, they often forget that this is how other things are built, but you just don't realize it. Like a warehouse. Have you ever seen somebody build a warehouse, the Amazon, and just pour the slab directly on the soil? No, they always bring in granulars and make the soil stronger before they set up their structure. So I'm just going to go back here. Thanks, Phil, for that. So I'm just going to go back and ask Keenan the same question. So how do you see this fitting into your future projects and the growth of your cemetery moving forward with MonuGrid?
We'll continue to use it as we're using it today, and when the opportunity comes along to either be creative with something special or create another section, we'll clearly make it part of that.
Awesome. And John?
Yeah, so we've already started using it on all of our projects for, like I said, the benches and 2-niche, 4-niche pedestals, all those kind of things. I think our next step is to put our trust in Phil and engineer the larger foundations under the heavier columbariums and things like that. Going up to the 20,000 pound hexagons, octagons, things like that. Because look, engineers, I have learned over my time in this, are pretty darn smart. And if an engineer tells me it'll work, I've learned to believe that it's probably going to work. So that's probably our next step, Jonathan, is going to the larger structures and using it for that.
Awesome. That's great. So I just want to go into a few of the questions that were in the chat because I'm going through it, and there are a few that are really good question. So for the people with Kelly who are actually doing the digging, have you ever encountered a situation where you had to dig in front of the foundation to put in a casket, and how did that go?
Yes, we've been in that situation multiple times. It just makes more work for us. Makes it a whole lot harder on us versus being able to move the monument, pull the foundation out, or I'm sorry, the MonuGrid out, and just relay a new MonuGrid when we're done. Now we have to bust out the foundation that's in the ground and then get all that out and then go back in and lay out MonuGrid to fix the situation.
Okay, that's great. That's great. There was another one here that I wanted to, because this is a good question here. So someone asked, is there anyone from the install team or anyone on the panel that has stopped using MonuGrid in a certain situation? So a non-suitable site or something like that. Has there been an occurrence of that? Or
No.
has it actually helped you where it's, a site that you can't do anything with except use MonuGrid, or sort of like what Keenan said earlier with the waterfront?
We've always used the MonuGrid on everything we possibly can, and it's done wonders. We haven't had a situation where we haven't been able to use it.
That's the
Awesome.
same.
What
with
about you, John?
bluegrass. We
Go ahead.
used it in the wet grounds, clay. It worked wherever we were at and with no issues.
Awesome. And I think it's very important to note, because this is a very good question, that, like I said at the beginning, if you have a situation in the cemetery where you are unsure, you don't really know what to do or if it's going to work, all you have to do is give us a call, and we can easily design a foundation that is suitable for the soil that you are working with. So, you can call us at any time and not have to struggle with where to install the foundation, how to install it, what granular do I use. So in certain types of situation, we might add more grid and less granular, or the granular might have less dust in it so that it can accept more water. So whatever the situation is, whatever you are faced with, we can probably come up with a solution for the type of soil that you're working with. So basically it's an a la carte foundation. So you can call us at any time, and we'll go over this with you on the phone and fix it right then and there so that you can go ahead and set the monument.
Yeah, I've seen situations where we've actually got on FaceTime with a client in a cemetery and walked them through some of the issues that they were having and did the installs, on FaceTime. I just want to mention real quick, John, I don't want to cut your flow here. If you have a chance to go on our YouTube, you'll see a great webinar that we did with Tom Jordan from Gates of Heaven with respect to flat markers and the project that he did, and the amount of money and time that he has saved is unbelievable. But it's worth looking at that video and watching it. I think you'll learn a lot. And Jonathan, I think there's a question about soils there from a gentleman in Texas, Oregon.
Okay. If you can find the question, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'll jump on that, Jonathan. He was asking about using this. He's from Central Texas. He was asking about using it in soils, similar to Central Texas. And I let him know we've got properties that we've used it out all over Texas, and he's going to reach out to me separately to come look at it.
Well, that's great. Thanks, John.
We got another sales rep.
I'd like to just real quickly ask the same question that I did to Kelly for John and Keenan. Is there any situation where you said, no, MonuGrid's not going to work here at all? Or do you just use MonuGrid and it works pretty much everywhere?
Look, I'll be very honest. When you all told me that Keenan was using it in Florida, I'm very well versed on what, how to, dig a grave. When you dig a 3x8 grave, it's usually a whole lot wider because of the sand just keep falling in. When I heard you were using it in sandy soils, I was fairly sold, because that's one of the hardest soils to put a foundation under, is that sandy soil. We've used it in I think 6 different states, all around the United States, different soils, and I've never had an instance where I said, well, I can't use this.
Awesome.
If I thought I couldn't use it, I would always reach out to Phil and talk to him about it, and again, let an engineer set me straight.
Awesome. That's great. That's great. There is only 14 minutes left here, so I would like to ask everyone, if you have questions, you can raise your hand. I think I've made everyone's mic accessible. So if you want to raise your hand or put a question in the chat for either the panelists or the engineer or myself on the training side, we would love to hear your questions. So we have a question here.
Jonathan, while we're waiting for questions, but back to Florida, John's exactly right. Other than the southeast part of Florida, the Miami-Dade area, there's just sand everywhere. And it's small sand, little sand, sometimes a little bit bigger sand, but it's all sand. And this just makes so many projects easy to do, and projects you'd never thought about doing, because if you start digging, your hole can get bigger and bigger and bigger before you know it, and you never get to the bottom of it. So I can't think of anything that we would do that we couldn't use MonuGrid for. And I would challenge anybody out there to take a chance with it. Try it. You'll be surprised, pleasantly surprised.
That's great, Keenan. That's great.
And Anthony Carpinello asked the question, anyone using this in the Northeast? We're using it in Toronto. I don't know if Toronto categorizes as Northeast, but it's up there. So we are using it with much success in Toronto.
Yeah, and coming up, I have a training event in Michigan as well, Detroit area. So we have a lot of stuff there too.
Yeah, and I think the big concern in the north is, and I could see Phil wants to get in on this. It's non-frost susceptible. Digging down to frost depth is no longer required. And the LDPE, because of the material that we have to manufacture the grids, is extremely important. Very, very important, because it doesn't get brittle when it gets cold. And but I'll let Phil talk about the
the questions. A lot of great questions. Where has it been used? Different soil conditions, and the questions are being answered by our wonderful panelists. Yeah, they've come across so many different situations, and it's been working. And if you have questions that haven't been addressed yet, and you have a technically challenging situation, as John said, just get in touch with us. We'll do site-specific engineered designs for you. We've got projects all over North America in all sorts of different soil conditions. Somebody asked about water levels going up and down. The granular we recommend to use with the MonuGrid is a good granular that's free draining, well graded. It's the same stuff you would use in the top of a roadway. So it's really good, strong stuff, and it can handle, it's free draining. So it can handle water levels going up and down. And as Pete said, because of that, it's not frost susceptible. It's flexible. It's not rigid like concrete. So it can absorb a bit of water like a sponge. And if it freezes, the frost expands within the air that's still in the concrete, in the granular, as opposed to concrete, which would be squeezed like a bar, like you're squeezing a wet bar of soap. So it can handle the frost heave, it can handle water fluctuation, water level fluctuations, can handle clays, it can handle the sands, lots of different stuff. I've done access roads across swamps with this type of technology, you know, taking fully loaded dump trucks. So if we can do that, we can certainly hold up monuments.
Yeah, it's interesting you
So-
brought up the
Yeah, go ahead.
kind of the roads and things like that, Phil. We actually are looking to use this in Canada as an entry road. I can't get into too much detail, but Phil and his team have kind of engineered an entire road using this. We're also going to use it under a couple new maintenance buildings that we're building. Use it as the floor. So permitting wise, for those of you who have gone through permitting, most of what permitting is, you know, a lot of what it involves is where the water's going. When you put in a road or a large, you know, slab foundation, they want to know what's happening with the water. And with this type of product, the reinforced soil structure product, the permitting is going a little bit smoother because the water doesn't, we don't have to mitigate the water. The water goes down into the MonuGrid. So I'm interested to see how that works out in 2025.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a good point, John, because this, like we said, it's new to the cemetery industry, but it is not new by all means in the industry, construction, civil construction industry. And this was actually invented to replace pavement. So replacing asphalt and stuff like that, so that the area remains permeable, free draining. So that's a very good point. We can actually reduce the amount of construction costs that you're incurring if you're building new roads or stuff like that, just by making it permeable and eliminating the need for that underground infrastructure. So we got another good question in the chat that I would like to ask the panels. Have any of you had any problems with monument companies coming in and either setting a monument on MonuGrid or having to build the foundation or something like that? Let's
I
start
never
with Kelly.
encountered any.
Yeah. No. Okay. And what about you, Keenan?
I've got one outside installer that visits regularly. He's looked at it, talked about it, but no, he has no interest in it. He likes concrete.
Okay. And what about you, John?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't get into the day-to-day monument operations at our cemetery, so I don't know whether we've used it or not.
No problem. And what if a monument company came to your cemetery and you're using MonuGrid and you know they really want to use concrete, like Keenan said, what do you do at that point, Keenan? You just let them install concrete, or do you tell them to use MonuGrid? How do you go about that?
I let them use concrete. It'll take them 3 days to do it. Even here, it takes a while for it to dry and set up and so forth. And I'll get 2 or 3 monuments in or markers in easily before they get their one they're working on. It wastes their time and money. Hey, go for it if you want to.
Okay. I like that mentality. I love it.
Hey, Jonathan, can you? Sorry.
Kentucky, near Lexington, Kentucky, where I was at, we actually had an outside monument company that came in and saw what we were doing, and he took a few pieces of the MonuGrid off of me to try it himself, and I think he preferred it. Now, you know, everybody's got individual taste, but he was going out and installing in small cemeteries, rural cemeteries, church cemeteries where he had trouble getting concrete in. So I know that he preferred it. And like I said, just because we were using it, he started using it.
That's awesome. That's great.
Jonathan, real quick, can you address undermining? Because I think it's a popular question.
Yeah.
And maybe Phil can pipe in.
Yeah, certainly. You know, definitely that's an issue. I know that a lot of cemeteries have situations where they've got an existing monument set on a MonuGrid foundation, and then they have to come back and put in another burial either on top or beside the existing casket. So if the monument foundation isn't that deep, should be fine. However, if there is a concern, that we actually have a design where you actually wrap the MonuGrid foundation with geotextile. So it's kind of like a burrito wrap, each lift that you go up. So you have, like say if the MonuGrid is 2 feet deep, you're gonna have 3 layers of MonuGrid, one on the bottom, one in the middle, one on the top. And then, so you'll have 2 zones of MonuGrid, of granular, and those are wrapped with the geotextile. So when you excavate now, the granular can't fall out. So basically you're holding it all together, and you can excavate right beside it and then backfill again.
Thanks, Phil. And we can cover all of this in training, which is part of what we offer.
That's what I was about to say. In the training that we do, I actually have a video of an engineering channel where they use a block of wet sand, and basically they use this block of wet sand and they put fiberglass screening inside. So just the regular screening that you would have on your patio door. And just by adding those layers of screening inside of the block of sand, he can actually set his car on there, the wheel of his car on the block of sand, and the sand doesn't fall out from underneath the wheel. So basically that's what the grid does, is just adding tension to the soil. So instead of the weight going right through and down to the bottom, each of those layers is actually spreading the weight sideways, which actually prevents the sand from unraveling. So we do cover this during the training session, where I actually show you how the bridging effect of the grid can actually keep everything together and keep it from unraveling. So that's something that we cover pretty extensively during the training. But just, for the sake of this presentation, just know that we can prevent the undermining from happening with a few solutions that we have. And when Phil said that it's the cloth, don't think about your garden variety geotextile. This is a very strong woven polyethylene. It's kind of like carbon fiber. So it's extremely strong, extremely strong.
Yeah, it's covered in the installation guide too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that too. Any other questions? Because we only have 3 minutes left. We know everyone is busy, so we're going to keep to our time here. Any other questions, either in the chat, or you can unmute yourself, or you can raise your hand to any one of the panelists, myself or Phil.
And I believe that Charles has been doing a great job handing out his email address. So anybody who's got questions that have not been answered, we will definitely reach out to you. And Charles has got a good handle on that. Thanks a lot.
We do Jonathan. Have one last question,
yep.
Pete. I just want to address real quick. So does IOWatt or MonuGrid have any competitors yet? There are other grids out there. You can go on Amazon and get one. Those grids are made of high density polyethylene. So again, we cover the plastic that we use in the training, so I won't go into too much detail, but we are the only ones that use low density polyethylene. Polyethylene is one of or low density is one of the most flexible, most resilient plastics out there. So in the training video, I do have other grids that I show the difference between, but basically the low density polyethylene is the key to how our grids are made, how strong they are, how resilient they are to weather. So if you want to go out and buy one on Amazon, yes, you can find one. It's probably going to break on the way to your location. So that's how brittle they are, and it becomes worse in the cold or even in the heat. A lot of these grids leach inside the ground as well. Our plastic is inert. It does not leach or pollute the ground, and it's rated for a 400-year lifespan. So we don't really have any competitors in that respect. And we've been in cemeteries now for 11, 12 years. So we know the industry, and all of the support and the design that Phil said that we could offer, that's all included in the price of one small grid. So as long as you buy our grid, most of the support in the background and all of that, the design, is all included in the price of the grid. Any other questions? If not, I'll let Pete sign off, and I'm going to go shovel some snow.
I just thank you very much for everybody who has registered and come on. Again, we're going to share these videos with you. A big thank you to our panelists, John, Kelly, Phil, Todd, Keenan. Very, very much appreciated that you participated with us. And again, thank you very much. I can't tell you how pleased we are with the fact that you've offered to do this with us. So
Well,
thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Very much.
Thank
Thank you.
Our pleasure. All right. Thank you, everyone. We'll talk
Have a good
again soon.
afternoon.
Yes. Thank you very
You too.
much. Have a good one.